Picture this. You're about to set off on a tough journey. You know it's going to be hard. And maybe you can picture the end, but you don't quite know how the steps along the way work out. Or maybe you can see a couple of the steps, but you don't quite know how it all ends. Right? But you've got a mixture of excitement, you've got a mixture of fear, and you've got that very human tension of feeling like you have a bit of control, but you're also powerless, right? You could use some encouragement. Now imagine that just before you set off on that journey, somebody close to you, somebody you respect, somebody who knows you quite well, comes up to you and comes close and says, I don't believe in you. You're doing this all wrong. Those words would feel devastating, wouldn't they? You know, they would color the rest of your journey if you still had the courage to go. You know, maybe you'd set off in tears, maybe you'd set off with a lack of self-confidence, with fear. Maybe you'd even be angry. Maybe the point of your journey would shift and you'd be like, I've got to prove them wrong. Right? But this is not what God does. Let's go back to that reading we've just heard in Mark. At that time in his life, Jesus was just about to set off on the beginning of his ministry. He was just about to kind of start the 3 years of his life that led him to the point on the cross where he died for us. And after this point where we see him getting baptized, he's just about to go into the desert to face 40 days of fasting and severe temptation from the devil. But what does God do? God comes to him and God says, you are my son, whom I love. In you I am well pleased. How powerful must have that encouragement felt to Jesus? How strengthening would those words have been from a loving father to his son at a key point in his life? Now we know Jesus was fully human, right? And like us, he needed encouragement. We're told he would often seek times away from the crowds to go and spend time with his father. And I think some of that was to find that encouragement. Anyway, I think we can say that God's encouragement to his son helped him to get to that place where he was able to say, it is finished. And where he won a victory that made a way for us. Now, if God had to encourage the greatest man that lived on earth, how much more does the average person need encouragement? Now today we're continuing in our Faith in the Family series, and if you haven't guessed, we're talking about the power of encouragement. So we're going to look at that in two places. I want us to look at that in what I call our home families, so the power of encouragement in our homes and in our families. And then I want us to spend just a short time thinking about the power of encouragement in the family that we call church as well. Now this is the first time that I'm giving a talk here on a Sunday. So as an introduction, let me quickly just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Musa, and many of you will probably know my wife, Katie, who's been coming here for probably a little bit over a year now. Last August, Katie and I had the privilege of managing to get married with COVID. And we actually got married in this church. Charlie married us. It was a really special day. It wasn't the wedding we planned, but it was, as we say, the wedding we didn't know we wanted. So it was actually a really special time. Katie and I have both lived in this area since about 2017. I used to lead a small group in the area, just a group of believers from different churches who had a heart just to live and live out church faithfully in the local community. We met in our homes and just through shared community activities, we did things with some of you here like robes. We got involved in some worship nights. We prayed in the community with a few people. We got to know quite a few people from St. Mary's, which was really nice. But like so many things last year, the small group I led was also shaken up by COVID. But it actually, we saw God's hand in it, and it brought it to a natural close in a healthy way. We had lots to be thankful for. And that made a nice path for me to join Katie here about, I think it was September last year. Which has been really good. And now we're both kind of slowly getting to know more and more people, getting plugged into the church family as best as we can, and we felt really welcome, so thank you for that. Obviously, it's been a bit harder in a pandemic to figure out who everybody is on the WhatsApp group, but we have hope for more natural connections and more natural relationships to come, particularly as, Lord willing, restrictions will get eased in the near future. So it's a really big honor just to be here and to be preaching to you, and I really pray that my words will just be from God to you. Okay, so let's look at encouragement in the home family. So I need your help on this one, just to get a quick feel of the room. If there are any kids here as well, I just need you to help me with this. So if you're able, I'm going to ask you, just put your hands up. We're going to start all with our hands in the air, and I'm going to ask you a few questions, and based on the responses, you're either going to hold your hand up or put your hand down. You can try this at home, but it's going to be strange if you're watching on YouTube. Okay, so everyone, if you're able, let's start with your hands up. Now there's no shame or pride in this, okay? Just numbers. Okay, keep your hands up if you have one or more brothers or sisters. Okay, a couple hands go down. Okay, keep your hand up if you have two or more brothers or sisters. Okay, a few more hands. How about three or more? Okay, we lost a lot there. How about four or more brothers and sisters? Still a few hands. 5? Still a couple of hands. 6? Lord have mercy on you. You're going to have a lot of work to do after this sermon. Okay, thanks everyone. But just to get a feel, right? And there are still some hands up there. Now the world and our church, no doubt, we're going to have so many different types of families, so many different types of circumstances represented here. I can't cover it all. And I think I just want to acknowledge that there's going to be a lot. Even just in that little game, we can see that the sizes of the families represented here in the church are going to be very different. On top of that, we're going to have families that will have been healthy and some families that will have been unhealthy. We're going to have families that will have caused pain and some that will be full of joy. We're going to have families that are far away and some that are very close. But no matter what your family situation is and your family circumstances are, even if it's the absence of a good family, it will have formed a key part of who you are, of how you think, how you live, how you love, how you interact with the world. So there's something very powerful about family to every one of us. And logically, that means that the way a family encourages then is also very powerful, right? I'll tell you a story. I grew up in Kenya. I have fond memories of school and school sports days. I'm assuming you have similar things here, like mini Olympics, track and field days where you get out and you go running and you compete. Now, unlike my famous Kenyan long distance runners, I used to do the short distances, the 100 meters, 200, 400 was probably the furthest I would enjoy. Now, I was always inspired by my big brother. He was sort of one of the fastest in his age groups. And I was always sort of, encouraged by mum and dad, who always just expressed a sort of a confidence in me and what I could do. And importantly, just like Charlie spoke last week, they also made time to come and watch and come and support me. And I remember this one sports day in particular. My brother had lent me his funky athletic shoes, so I was feeling quite pumped because of that. And I was lining up. I don't remember if it was a 200 meters or 400 meters, but I was lining up, starting on the curved section of the track. So you couldn't see the finish line. And I just remember sort of the race marshal coming up and saying, "On your marks," and kind of get into position, set, and then crack, go. Off I went. Started strong. I remember kind of pushing, pumping my legs. The spikes on my brother's shoes were kind of giving me that extra grip on the curved grass track. And I just remember kind of running and doing as well as I could, and then getting to that last straight, that last 100 meters, looking down the line and thinking, "Ooh, this is longer than I remember." And the voice comes into my head and it's just sort of, "Ooh, your legs are starting to give. You're getting breathless. Are you sure? I don't think you can make this." But then just at that time, I heard a voice cut through the crowd, "Go, Musa." And it was my mum's voice just piercing through the noise of the spectators. And then at the end of the finish line, I caught a glimpse of my dad standing there, cheering me on in his suit and tie. And it was just a much needed boost. And I just gave it my all. I ran and I sprinted and I crossed the line into his arms. the memory still gives me warm, fuzzy feelings. And the funny thing is, I don't even remember if I won that particular race. But I remember the feeling of just being loved, of being supported, and the feeling of having the courage just to keep trying and keep competing. And that extended beyond that day, that extended beyond sports. And that's the power of encouragement, isn't it? You know, when it's given, it's uplifting, it's energizing, it's strengthening, and it's godly. And its effects are long-lasting. When it comes from the people who are close to you, it's very special, it's very powerful, and it's full of power. Now, the Bible is packed with both direct and indirect kind of teaching and examples of encouragement. We've already seen how God encouraged his own son. God does it to his people. In Isaiah 41, he says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." In Colossians, husbands are told not to be harsh with your wives. And fathers in Ephesians are told not to provoke your children to frustration. Wives and mothers in Proverbs 31 are told to speak with wisdom and kindness. And children, there's stuff here for you too. In Ephesians, you're told to honor your parents. Appreciate them. Accept them. Even if you don't think they're cool. Or you don't think their jokes are funny. We go back to the Old Testament, right? And we see how important parents' words can be to their children. They can create generational effects. Do you remember the story of Jacob and his brother Esau? Now Isaac, their father, is planning to bless his elder son. You know, and his elder son was probably, he's macho, he was hairy, he was, you know, the hunter, he was like the alpha male kind of type. And it looked like his father sort of preferred him over his younger brother, right? His younger brother was a good cook. He's described as preferring to stay at home. Nothing wrong with that. But when Isaac was old, the younger brother Jacob tricked his dad. He put on a costume, he put on like goat skin to make himself seem hairy and rugged, and went up to his dad and kind of tricked his dad into giving him a blessing instead of his brother. And effectively his dad sort of blessed him and said a lot of negative stuff to his brother. And this action of encouraging one and discouraging the other created a split between the brothers, which actually, through generations, played out to the point where their descendants even went to war. Like, words are powerful, aren't they? And our words are powerful. In our families, our words are powerful, and we know this from our experiences. Did any of you ever sing that song, you know, the nursery rhyme, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, words will never hurt me"? It's not really true, is it? So today, I just want to encourage us to put our powerful words to good use in our families. Let's make our families places that are full of acceptance of one another, because when we accept each other, we encourage each other. And where we encourage each other, we grow, we become healthier, we become holier, and good comes out of that. Let our families be places where we see the depths of each other's flaws, but we choose to love. Instead of being harsh, instead of being critical. It can be so easy, right? It can be so easy to criticize, so easy to pick out the negatives and dwell on those things. In fact, I think sometimes we get into this place where we want people to change so that we can love them more. But I think, like with many things in Christianity, we need to do it like God does. We need to flip it around, and we need to love first to help people change. Right? This is what God did for us. God loved us first and changed us in that way. So let's model that in our families. 1 John 4:19 says, "We love because God first loved us." Let our families be places where we build one another up. We build each other up to be people of good character, people of good faith, people of good deeds. Kids, do you see your mums and dads doing something good? Tell them. Did dad finally crack a good joke? Let him know. Brothers and sisters, are you encouraging each other in the way that you play together, in the things that you're good at? Let's seek the good out in our families and overcome the darkness. Romans 12:21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Now, of course, there'll be times for discipline and correction, but even these must be done with love and encouragement first. And God again models this to us. In Hebrews 12, he says, or we're told that God disciplines us for our good because he loves us, so that we may share in his holiness. Encouragement is also about lifting each other up, right? Like, it's also about pointing us back to hope. So let our homes and families also be places where we help one another up when we fall, when we're low, when we're tired, when we're exhausted. Let our homes, let our families, let the way we are with each other kind of point us back to hope, to look up, back to Christ. So remember, our words are powerful. And listen, I love the Proverbs. I love the book of Proverbs. And listen to these nuggets that I found there this week. Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety in the heart weighs a person down, but a good word makes them glad. Proverbs 11:25. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will themselves be watered. Proverbs 15:4. Gentle words bring life and health. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. And Proverbs 16:24. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. So before we shift now to talk about church family, let's just take a minute here. Let's just pause and reflect on our family situations. And I want you to I'm going to give you two options to use to follow in this time. So you can do this at home too. Let's just take a minute. Option 1. Think about what you can do today or this week to encourage somebody in your family. And ask God to help you with that. So that's option 1. Option 2. Use this time, if you're feeling the weight or the burden or carrying any, call them scars from a family situation or environment that has not been encouraging. Use this time just to give that to God. Look to the Father who loves you first and will encourage you. So just take a minute to reflect on that, and I'll call us back. Okay. So we're covering some good ground here. And I want to quickly talk a little bit about the family we call church as well. Now again, there's lots in the Bible about this, about how we are a family, about how God has made us into this very special people. And let's go back to that reading we heard in Romans now. Romans chapter 15, which was written to a church. And it says, "May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind towards each other that Jesus Christ had, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Accept one another, therefore, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God." It's quite special that, huh? May God give us the mind of Jesus, who accepted us. I was just thinking this week, and I don't know if any of you have ever wondered this, but have you ever considered that Jesus has accepted us into his family? By believing in him, he is securing our eternity, but he is also sharing everything he has with us, including that special connection he has with his Father. I found that quite special this week. I found that quite beautiful. He has made us his family. And there's more about this in the Bible. In Mark, Jesus tells us, whoever does God's will is his family. In John, we see that the disciples Jesus taught grasp this. And John 1:2 says, "To those who believed in the name of Jesus, he gave the right to become children of God." Galatians chapter 3 puts it really well. It says, we have been adopted into God's family, and now we have the equal status as sons. And the word sons is actually really interesting here. It's really important because in that culture, in the legal context of the passage, sons used to inherit the possessions. So what this verse is telling us is that we, no matter where we're starting from, male or female, no matter what the color of our skin or our heritage is, whether we're young or whether we're old, we are being taken from a place where we were outsiders and being brought into God's family, where we get to call Jesus our brother, and we get to call God as much of a father as Jesus calls him. I think that's really special and really beautiful. And that's grace, isn't it? That's a gift. And I think it's important to think of church family as not just being an analogy. Church family is our identity. This family is real, this unity that we have in Jesus. We are brothers and sisters in Christ with a shared inheritance. So let me just plant this idea before you. If church is a family, like the Bible tells us, then all the stuff we've kind of looked at for our homes, all the stuff we've looked at around encouragement should apply here as well, shouldn't it? We should make time for each other. We should accept and love first. We should encourage others to grow in faith and in good action. We need to point people back to hope in the hard times. May God give us the mind of Christ who accepted us. Remember that. So to trigger your thinking, just let me throw out a couple of questions for you to see where your mind is at. Question 1, do you make time for your church family? What does that look like in your life? Question 2, do you find it easier to point out the flaws at church than you do to encourage? Question 3, are you speaking behind somebody's back at church? Are you gossiping about somebody? Question 4, do you consider other people's struggles in the church as being important? Yeah, tough questions, aren't they? Tough for me as well. But let me also point out a couple of things that I've seen that I think are good examples of encouragement here. Our church family WhatsApp is quite cool. Kudos to those who are active on it. I think it's been really nice to see people coming up, offering needs, people praying in response. I think that's a really good thing. Do you remember the Worship Academy that started before COVID? It's a shame we couldn't have continued that, but seeing that, for me, I thought that was quite a nice sign of encouraging people in skill and in music and building people up in confidence. It's a nice thing to see. The listening circle on racism in the summer and the action group that has come from that, I think that is an encouraging thing to see and a way that we are encouraging each other to speak freely and honestly about experiences. Even the small gesture of singing happy birthday on a Sunday is really good, isn't it? Mine's coming up in March, by the way, so I'm looking forward to that. And the responses to how, when people come up with ideas, when people come up with things that they would like to do or to serve in, things like robes or things like 24/7 prayer, I think it's really cool how the church backs people like that and backs those ideas. So those are all really good examples. And I think let's keep this stuff up. It's worth rejoicing over, and I think it really makes God happy. So I'm going to finish there by asking us now just to take another moment, just to pause, just to reflect on church family. And in this moment, just ask God to speak into your heart and show you somebody that could use encouragement today or this week in the church. And just try and make a little commitment to actually reach out and do something. So just take a minute to ask God to put someone on your heart now. I finish with a verse. Hebrews chapter 10, from verse 24. let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Amen.